Imagine a world where your mother wants you dead, where your siblings would poison your wine, where every meal could be your last. This is not fantasy. This is the true story of Mithridates, a king who discovered an impossible solution. He would drink poison every single day until his body became an impenetrable fortress against death itself. But here's what makes this story extraordinary. It actually worked. History records that Mithridates lived into his 70s at a time when most people died in their 40s. He survived assassination attempts. He dined on poisoned meat that would have killed ordinary men. And the knowledge he gained changed medicine for the next 2,000 years. How did a teenager, fleeing for his life, become the most feared and powerful enemy Rome had ever known? And what was the secret formula that made him immune to poison? A formula so legendary that emperors, kings, and queens across 3 continents would obsess over it for centuries. In 120 BC, in the kingdom of Pontus on the Black Sea, a child faced his first life or death choice. Mithridates was barely a teenager when his father died, murdered by poison. The weapon had been delivered by someone close to him, maybe a servant, maybe a family member. In Pontus, betrayal wore a familiar face. The throne should have passed to the boy. Instead, his mother, Queen Laodice, seized power. She would rule on his behalf, she announced to the court. The kingdom accepted this. Mothers were guardians of their sons, after all, protectors, loving caregivers. Except Queen Laodice had different plans. The young Mithridates began noticing small things. The careful way his mother watched him eat, the emphasis she placed on his drinking wine with her at meals, the sudden interest in his health, his food, his daily routines. These were not the behaviors of a devoted parent. These were the movements of a hunter stalking prey. One day, Mithridates overheard a conversation between his mother and her advisors. They were discussing his death, not as a tragedy to prevent, but as a practical problem to solve. How to eliminate him without creating suspicion. How to make it look natural. How to inherit his kingdom without resistance. The boy understood in that moment what his father had learned too late. In the palace of Pontus, the greatest danger did not come from enemies. It came from family. That night, Mithridates ran. He fled into the forest surrounding the capital of Sinope, disappearing into the wilderness with nothing but the clothes on his back and the knowledge that his own mother would hunt him down if given the chance. For 7 years, the teenage prince lived in hiding. Those years of exile were not wasted. They were transformative. Mithridates spent his time learning, absorbing every scrap of knowledge that could help him survive. He studied with scholars he encountered. He learned languages, eventually becoming fluent in nearly 20 of them. He read everything available about poisons and antidotes, about healing and medicine, about the chemistry of survival. He also observed. He watched how nature handled toxins. He noticed that certain animals could consume plants that would kill humans. Ducks ate poisonous hemlock without harm. Some insects fed on toxic flowers without dying. Snakes created venom inside their own bodies without poisoning themselves. These were not accidents. They were solutions. Mithridates began to formulate a theory. Immunity to poison was possible, not through magic or divine intervention, but through understanding, through systematic study, through turning the weapons designed to kill you into the tools of survival. He also studied history. He learned about King Attalus III of the neighboring kingdom of Pergamon, a ruler dismissed as mad by his peers. Attalus had abandoned the traditional duties of a king to conduct secret experiments in his palace gardens. He cultivated deadly plants, henbane, hemlock, aconite, thornapple. He mixed concoctions of poisonous and beneficial substances. He tested his mixtures on condemned prisoners, carefully recording the results. Other kings mocked Attalus for his obsession, but Mithridates recognized something they did not. Attalus was not mad. He was a scientist ahead of his time. He was doing exactly what Mithridates dreamed of doing, unlocking the secrets of poison and immunity. The exiled prince also remembered his own grandfather, King Pharnaces I, who had discovered a panacea, a cure-all substance that supposedly protected against all toxins. It had never been fully explained what this substance was or how it worked. But the legend remained. The family legacy whispered of a possibility. Poison could be transformed into medicine. When Mithridates finally emerged from exile, he was no longer a frightened boy. He was a young man with a vision and the ruthlessness to achieve it. His return to Pontus was swift and brutal. His mother still ruled, still plotting. She did not recognize the danger until it was too late. Mithridates moved through the palace like a ghost. One by one, the obstacles to his rule fell. His mother, his cousins, his rivals. He used their own weapon against them. Poison. Arsenic, most likely. The same odorless, undetectable poison that had killed his father. Within months, Mithridates VI sat upon the throne of Pontus as undisputed king. The boy who had fled for his life now controlled an entire kingdom. If he had nearly been murdered as a child, if his own mother had plotted his death, how could he ever trust that his food was safe? How could he ever drink wine without suspicion? How could he rule in constant fear of assassination? The answer was the obsession that had sustained him through 7 years of exile. He would make himself immune to poison. He would drink death daily until his body became fortified against it. He would become, literally, poison-proof. Beneath the palace of Sinope, Mithridates established secret laboratories. They were unlike anything the ancient world had ever seen. Not temples or monuments, but research facilities dedicated to a single purpose: creating immunity to poison. He gathered the greatest toxicologists and healers of his age. Crateuas, a Greek botanist of legendary skill, became his chief investigator. Papias, a master physician, joined the research. Persian magi brought ancient knowledge that had been passed down through generations. Scythian shamans, called Agari, arrived from the steppes, men who had spent their lives studying venom and its antidotes. These were not the people you would invite to dinner. They were obsessed with death. They were fascinated by toxins. They understood poisons the way musicians understand music, intimately, completely, at every level of complexity. The work began in earnest. They needed subjects for their experiments. The kingdom provided condemned prisoners, men sentenced to death who had nothing to lose and everything to gain by volunteering for the king's research. In exchange for participating in Mithridates' experiments, they would be fed and housed. Some might even survive. The experiments were methodical and merciless. Prisoners were given different poisons in carefully measured doses. Responses were documented. Some men died quickly, their bodies convulsing in agony before stopping altogether. Others lingered in pain for hours or even days. A few mysteriously recovered. Their bodies seemed to adapt. Their tolerance increased. With each death, Mithridates and his team learned. They learned which poisons worked fastest, which ones left traces in the body, which ones could be countered with specific antidotes, which ones were better for assassination versus which were better for display. But the king was not content to experiment only on prisoners. He had a theory, and testing it required the ultimate sacrifice. He would test it on himself. Mithridates began ingesting tiny doses of arsenic, not enough to kill him, just enough to sicken him, to make him weak, to poison his body in carefully calculated increments. His advisors watched with horror. His physicians begged him to stop, but Mithridates persisted, driven by an obsession that bordered on fanaticism. Day after day, he swallowed arsenic. His body ached, his digestion suffered. He grew pale and thin, but he did not die. Something remarkable happened instead. His body adapted. His liver began producing enzymes that neutralized the poison. The doses that would have killed an ordinary man became merely uncomfortable, then tolerable, then ineffective. The young king's body was learning to fight back. As word of Mithridates' immunity spread through the palace, something shifted in the minds of would-be assassins. Several conspirators attempted to poison the king, the traditional method of removing inconvenient rulers in ancient kingdoms. Each attempt failed. The poisons that should have been lethal glanced harmlessly off Mithridates' fortified physiology like arrows off armor. News of these failed assassination attempts spread quickly. Whispers circulated through the kingdom and beyond. Mithridates was not just a king. He was superhuman, he was invulnerable. He had achieved something impossible, he had conquered death itself. Mithridates understood the power of spectacle. He understood that perception could be as powerful as reality. So he began conducting public demonstrations of his immunity, theatrical displays designed to cement his legend. He would invite foreign dignitaries and important courtiers to state dinners. He would order his servants to prepare meat laced with poison, wine infused with toxins, bread mixed with deadly compounds, dishes that would drop an ordinary man dead within hours. Then he would eat them all. The gathered nobles would watch in stunned silence as their king consumed poison without fear or hesitation. He would laugh, he would pour more wine, he would toast to his health. He would dine while everyone else sat frozen, unable to comprehend what they were witnessing. Gasps rippled through the assembled crowds. Whispers spread. Their king was immortal. Their king was a god. Their king could not be touched by death. The effect was exactly what Mithridates intended. No one would dare assassinate a man who had conquered poison itself. No one would challenge a king whose very physiology defied death. The theatrical demonstrations of immunity were more effective than any army. They transformed a young, vulnerable ruler into a legend. Mithridates was not satisfied with merely surviving poison. He wanted to transcend it. He wanted to create something unprecedented, a universal antidote, a single substance that could protect against all known poisons. A formula so perfect that it would grant immunity to every toxin on Earth. To achieve this, he needed knowledge from everywhere. He sent envoys across the ancient world. From the Druids of Gaul, he acquired their pharmaca, powerful plant medicines and poisons that Celtic healers had guarded for centuries. From Mesopotamian doctors, he obtained texts describing the toxicology and healing practices of the ancient Near East. From Hindu physicians practicing Ayurveda, he gathered recipes for theriacs containing 50, 60, even 85 different ingredients. He corresponded with Zopyrus, a renowned physician in Egypt, who sent him his own universal remedy containing 20 carefully selected ingredients. He invited Asclepiades of Bithynia, founder of the most influential medical school in Rome, to join his research. Though Asclepiades declined to move to Pontus, he dedicated treatises to the king and sent him antidote formulas. Mithridates' international library of ethnobotanical texts and toxicological manuscripts became legendary. It contained knowledge from every corner of the known world, from Egypt to India, from Persia to the far reaches of Scythia. The king had essentially created an ancient research institution dedicated entirely to understanding poison and immunity. But the most valuable knowledge came from an unexpected source: his own allies, the Scythian archers. The Scythians were mounted warriors from the steppes, expert archers known for their sophistication in warfare. They had discovered something that revolutionized Mithridates' understanding of poison. They poisoned their arrows with a complex concoction of viper venom mixed with other neurotoxins. These poison-tipped arrows were devastatingly effective. But the Scythians had discovered something even more remarkable. Venom could heal as well as kill. In one battle, a warrior fighting for Mithridates received a severe thigh wound. He was dying from massive blood loss. No amount of bandaging would stop the flow. Death seemed inevitable. Then a Scythian healer stepped forward. He took viper venom, the very substance Mithridates had been studying as a poison, and applied it directly to the wound. The bleeding stopped. What should have killed him became his salvation. Snake venom itself became a medicine. Mithridates had been right all along. The line between poison and medicine was impossibly thin, determined only by dosage and application. The same substance that could cause death on a battlefield could stop a man from bleeding out. The same venom that killed in large quantities could save a life in carefully measured amounts. This revelation crystallized his entire philosophy. Poison and antidote were not opposites. They were two faces of the same phenomenon. Both were substances that could alter the body in profound ways. The difference was intention. The difference was dosage. The difference was understanding. After years of secret experimentation, testing, and refinement, Mithridates and his team created their masterwork, the Mithridatium. It was not a simple antidote. It was a universal theriac, an all-purpose tonic designed to protect against multiple poisons while also promoting health and longevity. The formula combined substances from across the known world. Base ingredients included cinnamon and myrrh from Arabia, honey from the Mediterranean and Black Sea regions, frankincense from distant trade routes, garlic, whose sulfur compounds were discovered to neutralize arsenic in the bloodstream, charcoal, which absorbs and filters many different toxins, St. John's wort, an herb whose remarkable properties activate the liver to produce powerful enzymes capable of neutralizing many dangerous chemicals. But the Mithridatium was revolutionary because it deliberately included tiny doses of poisons mixed with beneficial substances: blood from pontic ducks, extract from deadly hemlock, viper venom in infinitesimal quantities, the finely ground powder of fossils, glossopetra or tungstones, which are actually the teeth of ancient sharks. These fossils contained calcium carbonate that chemically reacted with arsenic through a process called chelation. The ingredients were mixed with honey to create an electuary, a thick paste that was molded into a large pill. The formula was Mithridates' greatest secret. He ingested his creation daily with cold spring water. Days passed, weeks, months, years. The king's health remained robust. His mind stayed sharp even as he aged. He lived into his 70s, an extraordinary age when most men of his era were long dead. The Mithridatium worked, or at least it did not harm him. Whether it truly granted immunity or merely reinforced the tolerance he had built through years of daily poison ingestion remained unclear, but the effect was undeniable. Mithridates became the symbol of invincibility, a king who could not be assassinated, a ruler who had conquered death itself. Mithridates ruled for over 50 years. He expanded his kingdom. He fought the Romans in 3 great wars. He became one of the most powerful and feared rulers of his age. When he finally died in 63 BC, forced to commit suicide after his defeat by the Roman commander Pompey, the legend did not die with him. If anything, it grew stronger. After his death, Roman soldiers seized Mithridates' personal library and archives. These confiscated documents were transported to Rome and translated into Latin by a scholar named Linnaeus. The great historian Pliny studied the king's private papers and marveled at what he found. Pliny concluded that Mithridates was a more accomplished researcher into biology than any man before him. In order to become immune to poison by making his body accustomed to it, he alone devised the plan to drink poison every day, after first taking remedies. Roman emperors became obsessed with obtaining Mithridates' secret formula. Poisonings were rampant in Rome. Fear of assassination haunted every emperor's court. If Mithridates had achieved immunity to poison, perhaps that immunity could be purchased, replicated, or stolen. Imperial doctors claimed to possess the true Mithridatium recipe. The doctor Andromachus compounded a version for the Emperor Nero, modifying it with 64 ingredients including minced snakes and opium poppy seeds. After Nero, every Roman emperor drank a daily dose of what was claimed to be Mithridates' original antidote. But as more doctors claimed to have improved upon the original, the formula became increasingly complex and exotic. Some versions contained 36 ingredients and weighed nearly 3 pounds, a dose for months of daily consumption. Later medieval recipes contained as many as 184 ingredients, each more elaborate and expensive than the last. The Mithridatium became the most famous medicine in history and the most profitable. For more than 2,000 years, from Charlemagne to Henry VIII, from Queen Elizabeth I to European nobility, kings and queens ingested daily doses of Mithridates' legendary theriac. The medicine became a status symbol. Royal and aristocratic versions were kept in ornate gold and pottery apothecary jars, many of them decorated with elaborate scenes from the life of the Poison King himself. These jars became treasured possessions, passed down through generations. Apothecaries were required by law to display all ingredients publicly and to mix the Mithridatium outdoors in town squares, so that everyone could witness the care and precision with which the legendary antidote was created. Cheaper varieties were sold to ordinary people, kept in plainer jars but still commanding high prices. Everyone wanted the protection that Mithridates had achieved. Everyone wanted immunity to poison. The concept spread beyond Europe. In Islamic medicine, Arab physicians created their own versions called tiryaki faruk, or dariyak, following Mithridates' principle of combining poisons with antidotes. Islamic scholars and physicians studied his methods and adapted them to their own medical traditions. In 667 AD, Islamic ambassadors presented the Tang dynasty emperor of China with a gift of the Mithridatium theriac as tribute. The ancient Chinese documents describe it as a dark red lump the size and shape of a pig's gallbladder. Chinese emperors began their own daily ritual of consuming the legendary antidote. Chinese manuscript illustrations show Persian-style envoys offering these precious red Mithridatium pills to the emperor. The Poison King had become a ghost haunting the medical systems of 3 continents. His obsession had transformed into a cultural phenomenon that would define how civilizations understood the thin line between poison and medicine for the next 2,000 years. Yet despite all this fame and all these copies, the original formula remained a mystery. When Pliny studied Mithridates' confiscated documents, he found very little that resembled the complex, elaborate theriacs that later Roman doctors claimed to produce. The surviving notes contained only a few commonplace ingredients, except for the blood of Pontic ducks. One scrap of paper in the king's own handwriting read, "Pound together 2 dried nuts, 2 figs, and 20 leaves of rue with a pinch of salt. He who takes this while fasting will be immune to all poison for that day." Pliny suspected this mundane recipe was either a forgery, a hoax, or a deliberate red herring planted by the king himself. The true formula, if it ever existed in written form, had vanished. Some historians theorize that Mithridates' genuine archives were encrypted in codes or written in obscure languages. Given his linguistic fluency in nearly 20 tongues, such encryption would have been entirely possible. Others suggest that the complete formula was destroyed on Mithridates' orders. Perhaps it was confided only to his closest allies. Perhaps it was lost in the chaos of his final wars. Maybe Callistratus, Mithridates' personal secretary, was carrying the formula when Roman soldiers murdered him during the final campaigns. Maybe Pompey, the Roman commander who defeated Mithridates, actually obtained the genuine recipe but kept it secret within his inner circle, using it privately rather than sharing it with other Romans. Or perhaps, and this is the most intriguing possibility, Mithridates never wrote down the true formula at all. Maybe it existed only in the king's prodigious memory. Maybe the knowledge was recorded only in his remarkable brain, his linguistic brilliance, and his decades of accumulated experience. When Mithridates died, the secret died with him. Without archaeological evidence, sealed jars of the king's own Mithridatium with identifiable residues, or hair and bone samples from a well-preserved corpse, we may never know the composition of history's most famous antidote. The formula that shaped medicine for 2,000 years remains locked in the grave with the Poison King. Yet the mystery does not diminish Mithridates' impact. His central insight, that understanding poison is the key to transcending it, remains profoundly relevant even in our modern age. Consider the irony. In the 1980s and 1990s, during the height of the Cold War, the Soviet Union maintained an ultra-secret bioweapons program. One of the top scientists in this program was a brilliant researcher named Sergei Popov. For years, Popov worked on developing biological weapons, the modern equivalent of the ancient poisons Mithridates had studied. Then, in 1992, Popov defected to the United States. His work shifted dramatically. Instead of creating weapons, Popov now focuses on broad-spectrum biodefenses, seeking, in essence, a universal antidote that could provide immunity to known biotoxins and weapons-grade pathogens. He is continuing the work that Mithridates began 20 centuries ago, in the secret laboratories beneath the Palace of Sinope. But perhaps the most striking modern parallel to Mithridates comes from an unlikely source: a truck mechanic and snake enthusiast from California named Tim Frieda, who in 2001 began deliberately injecting himself with snake venom in an attempt to develop immunity. Over nearly 18 years, Frida injected himself more than 850 times with venom from some of the world's deadliest snakes, black mambas, king cobras, taipans, kraits, and allowed himself to be bitten more than 200 times. In September 2001, he was bitten by 2 different cobras in the same night, leaving him in a coma for 4 days. Like Mithridates 2,000 years before him, Frida's body adapted. His immune system learned. His blood developed antibodies capable of neutralizing multiple neurotoxins. In 2017, immunologist Jacob Glanville, who had been searching for ways to develop a universal antivenom, discovered media reports about Frida and recognized the potential. Glanville contacted Frida and asked for blood samples. What they discovered was extraordinary. Antibodies isolated from Frida's blood, when combined with a small molecule drug called varisplatib, protected mice against lethal doses of venom from 19 different snake species. The cocktail provided complete protection against 13 species and extended survival time for the remaining 6. The research, published in the journal Cell, represents a breakthrough toward the universal antivenom that scientists have sought for decades. Snakebites kill approximately 200 people per day worldwide and leave 400,000 people per year with permanent disabilities. Traditional antivenoms, made by injecting horses or sheep with venom and harvesting their antibodies, can trigger dangerous allergic reactions and typically work only against specific snake species or closely related ones. Human-derived antibodies like Frida's avoid the risk of adverse reactions seen with animal-derived antivenoms. Tim Frida, like Mithridates before him, became his own greatest experiment. He transformed his body into a living laboratory. He drank poison, or rather injected it, daily, building immunity through the same principle that the ancient king had discovered 2 millennia earlier, that the body can learn to neutralize toxins through careful, systematic exposure. The substances both men investigated hold what philosophers call a Janus face. They have the potential for great harm or great good. The same knowledge that could be weaponized could also save countless lives. The same understanding of toxins that could destroy could also heal. This duality was at the heart of Mithridates' vision. He understood that poison and medicine were not truly opposites. They were different applications of the same knowledge. Both required understanding, both required precise dosage, both transformed the body in profound ways. In laboratories across the world today, scientists continue the work Mithridates began. They mix substances both beneficial and harmful, seeking that elusive universal antidote, the formula that will grant humanity immunity not just to poison, but to the very fragility that defines human existence. The Poison King is dead. His empire is conquered. His tomb is lost to history. But Mithridates achieved something far more enduring than any earthly kingdom. He became immortal in human memory. He is remembered not for his military victories or his territorial conquests. He is remembered for his obsession with understanding poison and transforming it into protection. His name lives on in the medical terminology Mithridatism, the practice of systematically ingesting small doses of deadly substances to build immunity. A pharmacy in Rome was still advertising a Mithridatium as recently as 1984. The king who feared death more than any man has become, paradoxically, one of history's most immortal figures. The young boy who fled his mother into the wilderness became a legend that would inspire kings, physicians, and scientists for 2,000 years. In ancient times, the Roman satirist Juvenal joked that perhaps murder weapons of cold steel might make a comeback if people would take a hint from old Mithridates and sample the pharmacopoeia till they are invulnerable to every drug. That joke contains a truth. Mithridates' solution was not merely personal, it was universal. It suggested that immunity, true immunity, comes not from avoiding danger, but from understanding it, from studying it, from transforming the weapons designed to destroy you into the tools of survival. In this lies his enduring power. In a world that still trembles at the prospect of poison, plague, and biological weapons, the Poison King's message resonates across the centuries. Understanding your enemy is the first step to transcending him. Knowledge of what destroys you is the pathway to invulnerability. Mithridates drank poison every day, and in doing so, he revealed one of humanity's most profound secrets: that the line between death and life, between poison and medicine, between destruction and healing, is far thinner than we imagine, and that those who dare to cross it might discover something extraordinary on the other side.